Welcome to another episode of Singapore's Real Estate Explained, where we bring to you objective advice and break down the information into bite size for you guys to understand. And today we'll be continuing on a series of top performing and bottom performing condos. So today we'll look at the bottom performing three.
Yes, so this one can be a bit iffy. And actually, there's something that's very interesting that you will actually see when we actually look at the bottom three. And what's interesting is actually that out of the three, we actually recommended to our clients two of them. And there's a reason for it.
I was going to say, this is going to backfire.
This is the reason. The reason will be explained over later on. Yeah. But first, maybe you can run through the caveats that we want to give first.
So the caveats for what we'll be sharing is then the performance is actually based and calculated on the annual capital gains from launch to TOP. So the 6 condos that we're comparing for the top 3 and bottom 3, they actually obtained their TOP in 2022 or 2023, and they're all 99 years leasehold, as well as more than 100 units. So the factors that apply to a development may actually not apply to another. So these are just some of the things that we note from our side.
Yep. And also common factors may not apply to developments based on the timeline. So these are just some of the caveats we want to give you. Before we move on to the next slide, we'll be showing you what exactly are the 3 bottom performing condos of 2022-2023.
Yeah.
All right. What do you think of this?
So if this whole list, all the way from Wester Grand, Daintree Residence, all the way up to 4th Avenue Residences, and some of the developments look familiar because some of our clients actually bought into them.
Yes, so I think it'll be quite questionable. How come we actually recommended 2 of the 3 bottom 3 condos, 4th Avenue and Affinity at Serangoon, even though their annual capital gains wasn't actually shown to be very high?
Yeah.
But actually, that's not really the case. And I'll show you why and explain to you why there is a specific factor that actually trumps all other factors. Yeah. But if you take a look at here, you can see that those that are these developments that are bought in 2017, 2018 all average around 4.36%.
Yeah.
So really, really high returns, especially if you include the ROE calculations. And overall, most of them are hit above 4%.
Yeah.
And this ACG is actually calculated based on the average of each transacted resale properties in units in each of these developments. Okay, so the first one is 4th Avenue Residences. We'll actually go through some of the basic project information. And then after that, we'll find out what exactly are the factors. Why is it that 4th Avenue Residences did not appreciate that much?
So for the project location itself, if you guys don't know, 4th Avenue Residence is actually just next to 6th Avenue MRT. So they actually have a side gate, which makes it very convenient. Location-wise, you also have your eateries. You also have a cold storage right beside. In terms of project details, it's actually a 99-year-old leasehold development in District 10, and number of units that they have is 476. So a mid-size development that is quite healthy in terms of the residential units.
That's right. And you can see that the interior designer is there's 3 Farm Second Edition in Index Design, and the main contractor is Tiong Ike Construction, which is quite a popular, quite a well-known contractor. Yep. And we take a look at the basic information here. You can see that currently the price is going at 2,645 PSF in D10 Bukit Timah, completed in 2022. And current rental yield is about 3.62%.
Yep.
So what about performance? Let's take a look at this.
So 32 units out of 455 units that has been taken on the first month, that's 7%. So in terms of take-up rate, it's not the best or the most ideal.
That's right. So there is, the initial uptake on the first month can be an indicator of how much the development is going to appreciate, right? So 7% is actually quite low if you take into account the take-up rate of the other alternatives around the same time.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at this year, we can see that the take-up rate was actually, even for the worst performing developments, the take-up rate is still about 20+, 30+%. So 7% is really, really low. And if you take a look at the performance, there's something that's quite interesting. If you take a look at the price trend,
there's like a drop in the middle.
That's right. And what does this actually say? What does this actually tell you about property price? Okay, so now we take a look at the performance, and you can see something that's quite interesting. For the audience out there, what do you think is something that's quite interesting about this price graph?
Are you going to release the answer?
No, in a while. Okay, so but before that, we can see that overall 1.9% annual capital gains based on each of the individual transactions, and 3.6% rental yield is not very high, not very low.
It's about
It's about average, I think. Yeah. And here you can take a look as well at profitable transactions, total of 8 transactions and 1 unprofitable transactions. You can see that the annualized gains for each of them are about 2.6, 2.9, but there is actually an anomaly here. And why is there an anomaly here at 5%? Well, we will take a look at it in a bit.
So this actually shows that the annualized gains actually vary quite a lot from one unprofitable transaction at minus 2.3 all the way stretching up all the way to 5%.
That's right. Although it's quite interesting for this particular unprofitable transaction, it's actually bought and sold within a year. So I think there might be some personal issues with the buying and the selling. So unfortunately, the buyer would have had to pay the SSD lah. Yeah. So first we think about why is this in the bottom 10? Why is this the worst performing development out of all those in 2022, 2023? We take a look at the region and district factors. That this is the first factor that we find that could have contributed to that. So if you take a look, when you have, you can see that 4th Avenue Residences, D10, Tanglin and Holland, and CCR, they are all at they all did not appreciate as much. So instead of being a development issue, it actually could be a region or a district issue. And if you take a look at the next slide, you can see here, CCR as compared to RCR and OCR actually did not perform as well if you had bought in 2019. So for CCR, it would have appreciated only 12%, whereas for RCR and OCR, you would have appreciated by 22 and 27.
So I think this is an important point to note also when we're looking at some of the analysis. When we look at development and it says, it performed, whether it performed relatively well or relatively not as good, we have to take a look at comparison to how did similar projects or developments did within the same time period.
That's right.
Yeah. So if everybody is moving together, then comparatively, are you doing better or are you doing worse?
That's right. And actually, this is a lot of times it can actually just be a macro phenomenon that people do not consider. People will think, okay, this development didn't do very well, but they don't actually look at the bigger scope. How did the district perform?
It could have been the entire district didn't do as well. So it's not really that this development didn't do well because of certain aspect, but it's because of the macro market forces that actually cause it to didn't do as well.
That's right. And if you look very closely, you can see that in between 2017 to 2019, there was actually a very large jump in price for condo developments in the CCR area as compared to the RCR and OCR. And this widened gap actually made CCR so too much expensive that it no longer is able to appreciate as much. People are not able to afford as much. As you can see, quite recently, TMW Maxwell had only had 7 units transacted. And even though the qualitative aspects of that development is pretty solid for someone who wants to stay work and stay in the CBD area, the problem is the price is way too high. It's at 3,300 PSF. And even though people, some people prefer to work in CBD, I think that the difference in price for the location is no longer that big of a deal. And people are actually more willing, or even they rather stay in RCR because they don't really want to stay in their work area. But at the same time, the price difference doesn't make sense. And Singapore is getting more and more connected. Yeah. So that's the reason why you can see that CCR properties are getting less and less popular. And you can see that you can compare CCR, RCR, and OCR. Actually, even though there is not too much difference between CCR and RCR, their price difference has been about 34%, 35%, 36%. But there's one thing that you also need to note. It is that the price change is pretty much a flat amount. But when there's a flat amount that's increased, you can see that, for example, let me give you an example. If you have 2,000 and you increase to 2,200 versus you have 1,000 and increase to 1,200, which one has a higher percentage increase?
Of course, the 1,000.
Yes, of course, the 1,000. But you can see that how property prices are moving is actually more of in flat amounts, which means that those that are higher in price, higher in PSF, the amount of percentage gain for the same flat amount of increase is lower.
Yeah.
So this is actually one of the reasons why if you buy something that's of a higher price, your appreciation percentage is actually lower.
Yeah. But something interesting that we actually see when we look at the overall graph is that for someone who bought in after the launch in 2020, the price would then have increased for them for about 23%, and the annualized capital gains is about 7.67. So why such a great difference as compared to what we were looking at previously?
That's right. You can see that exactly it's because the price was too high if you had bought at launch in 2019. And guess what? If you buy earlier, and the prices eventually drop and then go up again, your price, not only is your price increase less, but it's spread over a longer time, which means your annual capital gains will be lower. So we actually recommended our clients to buy Fourth Avenue residences in 2020 when the prices actually dropped. And you can see that actually what this tells us is that you see that this development, right? That's what actually changes for the development as the prices are going up or as there's a price drop. You can see that the layout doesn't change, right? The number of units doesn't change. The location doesn't change. The connectivity doesn't change. But what changes is the price. And you can see that you could make money, you could lose money.
Yes.
And it's all dependent on the price.
So ultimately, I think entry price is very important when we actually enter in development. Whether you're the ones entering at the start, ultimately it doesn't matter as much as are you entering at the right entry price. That's
right. So if you take a look at especially for the worst performing, you can see that a lot of times, especially for from what we've analyzed, for the 99-year leasehold medium-sized developments, it's all about the timing, about whether you enter at the right time at the right price. Yeah. And if you take a look here, if you bought it in 2020, you can see one indicator you could have used is comparing the development to the district price, average price. You can see that Fourth Avenue residences at the time was 12.9% above the resale price in D10, which majority of them are actually freehold. And this price gap could be a bit too wide. But then when they drop price, you can see that it's only the development that drop price. It's not a district phenomenon. It's not a region phenomenon. You can see that D10 pretty much stayed the same, stayed stagnant. So the price difference you can see has actually dropped from 12.9% to 6.52%. So this can be one indicator for you to see, is the development that I'm buying into too expensive right now? Yeah. And you can also see on the right here that there is quite a large volume transacted at the beginning. But you can see over here in the middle part where there is a price drop, there actually is not too many people who bought compared to at the start. So it's not necessarily that where there is a high uptake, it is where you should also follow. And vice versa. You must look at the price and you must determine whether this price relative to the alternatives actually makes sense for the development.
Okay, so looking at the performance-wise, we go back to the anomaly that we're looking at, which is the 5% annualized gains as compared to, the 2.6, 2.9%. We can then see the difference for this transaction is that it was bought in 2020 as compared to the rest that was bought in 2019 at launch. You can also see that the purchase price we're looking at for this unit is about 2,258. That's when developers actually dropped their pricing from about 2,425. And due to the right entry price, this buyer then actually made a 5% annualized gains compared to some of his neighbors who actually bought at the start.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so moving on to our second development that we're looking at for the bottom performing, we have Affinity at Serangoon.
Yes, actually, Affinity at Serangoon is at number 3. But there's a reason why I'm putting it at I'm putting it right after 4th Avenue Residences is because we can see a lot of similarity between the two. Okay, in terms of project location, you can see that it is Affinity at Serangoon is very near Kovan and Serangoon, of course. You can see below, quite a distance away, is next Serangoon and Kovan MRT. All right.
So mega development.
That's right.
More
that's
than
right.
1,000 units. Yeah. So this is a 99-year-old from 2018, and developer is under Oxley.
And you can see here is also DP Architects, and this is a very familiar, architect that was seen from the previous top 3 performing developments as well. But yet it is somewhere considered at the lower end. So does the developer reputation matter really? Does connectivity matter? All these qualitative factors, actually they only matter to the extent that it affects the property price. And what you have to do is to compare what are the options that's currently in the market, and you can see with these qualitative aspects, what should the price be, and is the launch price currently undervalued? Yeah, and if you take a look here, you can see surrounding developments. There's actually the Garden Residences and Parkwood Residences. They are quite similar in terms of completion. Current prices somewhere at the top as well, 1,007, and then Parkwood is at 1,008. But you can see the take-up rate very similarly.
107 units out of 1,012 units. So 10% take-up rate for a huge development. I'd say also not the most ideal case at the start.
That's right. But what is interesting also, something that is similar but may not be that obvious if you take a look, what do you see here as well? Apart from the 3.49% annual capital gains and 4.4% rental yield, you can see there's a dip again. But where is the dip? It's not over a few months. It's actually even within 1 month or 2 months.
At the start. Developers realized that, pricing strategy was wrong. It was a wrong move, and they made some changes which probably benefited the developers because units move, but then this came at the expense to those that bought early at the start.
That's right. So actually what you could use as an indicator is looking at the hype, and on the ground, if you have decided to, ballot for a development, you can see actually how many people are deciding to take it up, because a low take-up rate could indicate that the prices has been too high, and there is a chance that developers will end up dropping the price. Of course, how do you know whether the developers are going to drop price apart from the take-up rate? There are other factors as well, which we'll share another time. But you can see, let's take a look at the performance here. You can see that there's actually 79 profitable transactions, quite a lot of profitable transactions. They average about 2 point something to about 4.6%. So because and usually this is the case for large developments, you can see that there can be a huge range of properties that of units that actually make money, and some only made some would have made 5%, some could have made 0 point something percent. And we can take a look at the next slide. You can see here, if you had bought on the launch day, right, you would have made 5.68% over 4 years' time. And that averages out to
1 point something.
1 point something or less, right? And you can take a look here. If you sort by the least profitable transactions, you can see what is the commonality.
And after minusing off all your fees, your stamp duties, your property tax,
that's right.
you are basically...
You could be making a loss,
Yes, correct.
That's right. And you can see here what is the pattern. A lot of them were bought in 2nd June 2018, they were bought at 1,700, 1,600. You can see, and then eventually their sale price is also 1,700, maybe 1,800 for some. But you can see the annualized is 0.6 to 1 point something, 2 point something. Right. But if you actually bought at a time after the dip in price, which was in 2000, actually it was 1 or 2 months after the launch date, you would have made 12.59% over the course of 4 years. That is quite decent. Especially if you bought it in 2019, it will be actually shortened to 3 years.
Yes.
And your annual capital gains would be currently 4 point something percent.
So look at the performance itself then. You can see that for those that entered about the 2004 range, their annualized percentage returns will then be about 5% all the way up to about 5.5%.
That's right. You can see the purchase price is actually 1,004 instead of 1,006, 1,007.
Yeah.
And the sale price is 1,007, 1,008. Similar sale price, but you can see because of the low initial purchase price, the annualized gains is much higher.
Yeah.
So why is this so? It's very similar. First, you can see a comparison to the district performance. So Affinity at Serangoon compared to D19, you can see at the time of launch, it was launched so high, it was 26.07% above D19. And you know that it is only, this pricing is specific to the development. It is not that D19, the whole district itself, or the immediate area itself, actually has an appreciation for one reason or another. And you can see right after the drop, you can see the there has not been a lot of change for D19, but Affinity dropped to 14.5% price difference.
Yeah.
So you can see that how is it that some people can buy a new launch, right? They can buy a new launch even in the same year. Some can make money, some can lose money. Why is it? And the thing is that, as I mentioned previously, right, these factors are static. They are static factors that we tend to consider. But actually, if you just look at price, of course, there are different ways to determine what is the right entry price. But actually, at the end of the day, it's all about price. If you buy it high, then you will lose money. If you buy it low, you make money. And here we look at the last one, which is actually a bit different from the other two, Mayfair Gardens. So Mayfair Gardens, you can see, is at Bukit Timah. Currently, there is a new launch over there that was very, very popular, which is the Reserve Residences. You can see that Mayfair Gardens also came up together with Mayfair Modern and recently TOP as well. Very, very near to King Albert Park.
Okay, so looking at the basic info itself, Mayfair Gardens, it's 99 year from 2018. So the TOP will be this year, 2023, and number of units is a mid-sized development. So looking at about 215 units. So average indicative price we're looking at currently is about 2,119 per square feet.
Yes, and rental yield is about 3.78%, which is also roughly around average. Yep. But if we compare with the surrounding developments, actually, apart from Mayfair Modern, which pretty much came up together with Mayfair Gardens in 2018, the rest are either very old freehold or some 99 year, but they're all quite old. The more recent one is in 2016 freehold KAP residences. But of course, most recently, the one that's very popular, the Reserve Residences, is actually quite a slight distance away, nearer to Beauty World MRT as opposed to KAP.
Okay, looking at the performance itself, for this one, 82 units have been taken up on the first month, so 38%. Compared to the previous two developments that we're looking at, this is considered one of the better performing ones at the start.
That's right.
In terms of the performance numbers itself, annualized capital gains is about 2.42% and their rental yield is about 3.7%.
And for this one, you can see that the price trend is not as similar because there was no intentional dip in the price. It's just that the appreciation is a bit slower. And if you take a look at the performance, you can see that the annualized gains is actually 0 point something to at most about 4%. Yeah, but most of them are in the 2 point something range, on average 2.4%. Yeah, and it is not too great, but actually this could be a development, in my opinion. It could be an opportunity to get for this development, especially because of the Reserve Residences. Yeah, but we'll take a look at that in a while. Firstly, you can see if we compare Mayfair Gardens, one reason is that Mayfair Gardens compared to the surrounding resale, the price difference is quite high. So if you see in the same quarter, Q3 2018, when it was launched at 1932 PSF, the resale in the same area was at 1,263. Yeah. And you can see within 1 km for resale, it was going at 1,474. So there's quite a big price difference, although not so high, but quite a fair bit of price difference. But what's interesting is that actually, even though Mayfair Gardens and Mayfair Modern came out pretty much together, Mayfair Modern actually outperformed Mayfair Gardens by quite a significant amount. Yeah. So you can take a look at Mayfair Gardens. You can see that compared to OCR prices, it's actually at the time it was launched a 42.91% price difference.
Yeah.
And that's why. And you expect that, it's because in a prime location, right? But if you take a look at this graph, actually the prices caught up.
Yeah.
OCR new launch prices are actually catching up to some of these developments. Yeah, and the price gap has been narrowing and narrowing, which is why actually, in my opinion, right now, Mayfair Gardens is quite undervalued. Yeah. And second factor is if you take a look at relative price to alternative new launch in 2018, it's still considered the sixth most expensive at launch for 99-year leasehold development.
Yeah.
So one common trend that we can see from the bottom three is that those that don't do very well tend to have a much higher flat price. Yeah, because of what I explained previously, that if your actual quantum is higher, your percentage gain is lower because of the flat increase phenomenon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see the nearby competition. The reason why I think that right now Mayfair Gardens could be something that's undervalued and could be considered is because you can see that Mayfair Gardens, Mayfair Modern started out about the same price, right? But you can see that right now Mayfair Modern is going at
higher.
Yeah, it's going at about 200 PSF higher, and so is the Reserve going at 2,500. Although the Reserve is in a much better location,
Yeah.
So one explanation for why the prices, or on the flip side, one other explanation for why the price of Mayfair Gardens has been so suppressed is because when people see that the Reserve Residences, there's a new development, is going at 2,500 in a way better location. It is 4 or 5 years newer than Mayfair Gardens.
Relatively, it seems like a better deal.
Yes. So even though people who buy the Reserve Residences are only looking to stay, 4 or 5 years later, whereas those who are looking at Mayfair Gardens are looking to stay now, you may think that, actually, they are different groups of buyers, isn't it? But the thing is that when they have something that is close to compare with, it will actually serve as a ceiling, even though the group of buyers are different. It's a mindset thing. Yeah. So, right, in summary, if you take a look at these three developments, you can see there's a common factor. The common factor is that even though in terms of what is calculated to be annual capital gains is the lowest, actually, if you realize, it's all about what price you enter at. These developments, a lot of them started out at a very, very high price.
Yeah.
And if you have the right indicators, you would have known that it is overpriced with and without some of the qualitative factors, right? And if you actually bought after the dip, you would have made the same or maybe even more than some of the top performing developments. But at the end of the day, for mid-size 99-year leasehold developments in 2000 and the TOP in 2022 and 23, you notice that their average annual capital gains is still actually about 3%, 4%, 5%.
Yes.
But if you take a look at this, what are the actual worst performing developments? Actually, this is the caveat that we have given, but in reality, these are the worst performing developments that TOP in 2022 when you include all the developments.
Yeah. So for worst performing of all the developments that actually TOP in 2022, we can actually tell that out of 21 of them, 8 of these developments are small freehold developments up to about 117 units, and their annualized capital gains range from a loss of -3% to 0.6%. And then for next up, we can see that out of 21, only 2 of them had average performance, and we had one that is top performing freehold development But with 22 units, and this is only based on one transaction, so not the most accurate data that we have to be
That's
used.
right. That's right. And if you take a look here, right, these are the developments with the capital gains, small developments and freehold. And there's a reason for this. There are multiple reasons, right? So one of the reasons is that for small freehold developments, because of you will have to pay a freehold premium, number one. Number two, because of a small development, your facilities are worse than a large development. And also your economies of scale, the amount that you have to pay will be higher. So if you take a look at these bottom 8, you can see that the average prices are 2002, 2007, 2005, even up to 2009. So because you know that price is a factor, then relative price is a factor. So with such high prices, because of low economies of scale, the amount of capital appreciation potential is very low. And also another thing is that for smaller developments, it is very hard. It's also very volatile because it's very difficult to set a reference price. When you have a large development with a lot of units and a lot of transactions, right, you can see that people are able to push up prices slowly because of all the transactions that's happening in the development. But if there's only one or two, chances are it will be very difficult for you to increase the price from previously.
Because it may take a couple months for you to even have one transaction.
That's right.
So there is not much comparative back when buyers actually come in and they want to offer a price. It's hard to base it on a last transaction because it's been, quite some time. Yeah.
That's right. So out of all of this, what we learn is that in terms of worst performing developments, there won't be too much difference between the bottom few and the top few 99-year leasehold mid-sized developments, as long as you buy at the right entry price. But if you're looking at investment, unless you're looking to stay, right, please avoid small developments that are freehold, with one exception. The exception is there is an ABSD fire sale. So at the end of the day, right, what you can see is that for 99-year leasehold mid-sized developments, the price appreciation are all quite there. It's just you have to know at what price you should enter at. But when it comes to investment, please do avoid in the usual case, you should avoid small developments that are freehold because of these additional factors that prevent small freehold developments from actually having good appreciation. But there are caveats to that also, and that is one very important caveat is that if there is a very, very big discount for these small developments, you could consider it.
And that, meaning the pricing that it's being launched out is being sold at, it's at a price gap, a huge price gap as compared to your leasehold or even comparable to leasehold, then it's something that you may want to consider also.
Yes, or if there's an ABSD fire sale and there's a drop in, let's say there's 8% price drop, then that could be a time where you can consider as well for investment. Yep. So this wraps up the end of our top 3 and bottom 3 condo developments.
We hope you've gained a little bit more insights. If you have any questions or you want to consult any of us with regards to anything related to the real estate investment, I think you can contact our WhatsApp number over here. And we also link a QR code for our exclusive Telegram group where you can get constant updates. And I think that's all for today. So this is Grace.
This is Caleb.
We'll see you the next time.
Bye-bye.